The human man cursed under his breath as another plate of the alien woman's armor slipped from his grasp and clattered against the metal floor, sending a shower of sparks into the low-gravity air. He had been told countless times that fixing alien technology would be straightforward if you followed the manual, but apparently straightforward in an interstellar context meant beware of hidden energy fields and self-repairing components that actively resist human touch. He bent to pick up the piece, muttering jokes about how even a toaster seemed easier to fix than this, and almost laughed at the absurdity of calling a war-ready armor set a toaster. She stood across from him, arms crossed, her long ears twitching with a rhythm that seemed almost musical, a silent commentary on his fumbling. "You know," she said, voice low but teasing, "most humans can't even thread a needle without electrocuting themselves. And yet here you are, managing to hold an entire exoskeleton together without vaporizing yourself. I'm mildly impressed." He tried to bow awkwardly, but his knees betrayed him in low gravity, and he ended up half crouching, half floating, flailing like a puppet. She tilted her head, a smirk tugging at the corner of her lips. "Mildly impressed," she repeated, as if savoring the phrase. "I'll take it as a compliment, maybe." He grinned, brushing imaginary dust off his hands. "I'll even accept it with a bow if you throw in a cup of whatever humans drink when they survive armor repairs." He waved vaguely at the plate in his hands. "Coffee, tea, battery fluid, I'm flexible." She raised an eyebrow, amused, but didn't answer. Instead, she shifted her weight, and the faint hum of her armor thrummed through the floor as nanites inside the suit began reconfiguring the damaged areas automatically. He frowned at the sudden movement. Wait, don't start self-repairing yet. I haven't had the chance to look heroic while fixing this." Her long ears flicked sharply, a gesture he was starting to interpret as a combination of patience, curiosity, and mild exasperation. "Heroic? In a debris-strewn hangar with sparks flying everywhere while you threaten my armor with your clumsy hands. That's heroic." She leaned forward slightly, eyes glinting with amusement. "Absolutely," he said, trying to sound confident while failing to stabilize a plate that kept sliding from his fingers. One man, a pile of alien tech, and nothing but sheer, reckless human ingenuity. It's practically a soap opera." She laughed, a sound that cut through the mechanical hum of the room and made a few floating tools jitter in the air. "A soap opera, you say?" she said, tilting her head further. "If this were a soap opera, I'd be the brooding warrior alien with secrets you could never guess. And you'd be the comic relief, who somehow saves the day despite being utterly useless." "Comic relief is a crucial role," he said, propping the plate against a nearby crate and pretending to salute. "I take my responsibilities very seriously. It's in the manual somewhere. Somewhere after, do not press the red button that explodes." She snorted, and for a moment, the tension of the battlefield they had narrowly survived seemed to evaporate, replaced by something lighter, something almost domestic, if a floating, partially electrified workshop could ever be called that. He adjusted another plate, and this time it clicked perfectly into place. He grinned at her, triumphant, and she raised an eyebrow, clearly more impressed than she cared to admit. "You know," she said, leaning closer, "your hands are amazing." He froze. Half the tools he'd been juggling floated out of his grip and spun lazily in the air, and he choked on a laugh. "Excuse me." Her lips quirked into a small, mischievous smile. "I said your hands are amazing. I didn't specify why, but do take it however you like." He swallowed hard, suddenly aware of how warm the room felt, though the life support systems were doing a fine job of keeping temperature and oxygen levels in check. "Right," he said, trying to recover his composure. "Hands, amazing, not, threatening or awkward in any way." She tilted her head, letting one of her long ears brush against the rim of her helmet. "Threatening? Hardly. Awkward. Occasionally, but endearingly so. And surprisingly capable for a human who looks like they barely survived their last alien encounter." He laughed, nervously flexing his fingers as if proving a point. "See, totally capable, maybe even heroic, in my own clumsy, uncoordinated way. Her smirk softened into something he couldn't quite place, a mixture of amusement and something warmer. Clumsy, yes. Uncoordinated, debatable. But I suppose it's charming. He choked on his next joke, barely able to push it past the rising warmth in his chest. Charmingly clumsy. That should be my official title in the Intergalactic Alliance handbook. Official title, she repeated, almost whispering now, her long ears flicking in a way that suggested she found the idea entertaining. I could get used to that. The room fell silent for a heartbeat, the floating tools orbiting lazily around them. Then a small maintenance drone, attracted by the laughter, zipped past and sprayed a mist of lubricant across the floor, sending the pair slipping slightly. They both caught themselves, laughter erupting in unison, and for the first time he realized the absurdity of the situation. Two warriors, one human and one alien, in the middle of a ruined battlefield, flirting with sparks flying and tools floating around like space debris. He finally straightened, holding up the last piece of armor as if it were Excalibur itself. And there we have it. Fully operational, fully spectacular, and not a single life support system harmed in the process. She looked him over, her long ears twitching, and for a brief moment, the tension of survival and battle melted into a private, unspoken understanding. Fully operational, she repeated, and perhaps even more impressive than I expected. He smiled, shrugging modestly, though inside his chest was a wild rhythm he could barely control. Impressive, me. I thought I was just comic relief. Her laugh, soft and melodic, filled the space once more. Comic relief, yes, but even comic relief can be unforgettable. And for the first time that day, he didn't feel the weight of armor, battlefields, or alien tech pressing down on him. He only felt her presence, her humor, and the strange thrill of being, somehow, not just a helper, but someone who mattered. The floating tools clattered gently to the floor around them, harmless now, as if even the universe had decided to pause and give them a moment of absurd, human-alien intimacy, laughter and sparks included. The hum of the transport ship's failing gravity field made every movement feel like a slow dance in zero-G, and he cursed quietly when yet another wrench floated past his ear like a careless asteroid. He reached for it, hand trembling slightly, and missed, sending it spinning into the airlock viewport with a soft thunk. The alien woman watched, reclining in a corner of the deck, long ears twitching in a way he had begun to recognize as amusement rather than impatience. "You're like a one-man circus," she said, her voice carrying a melodic lilt that made him think she might actually enjoy watching him struggle. "I didn't think humans could invent chaos on this scale." "Chaos is my specialty," he replied, floating sideways to snatch a screwdriver from the wall-mounted magnetic strip, only to knock a maintenance drone off its perch in the process. "They should really put it on my resume. Chaos coordinator. I hear interstellar fleets are desperate for that skill set." She chuckled, the sound warm and oddly human, but her eyes sparkled with something sharper. "You say that like it's a skill. I call it reckless endangerment." "Semantics," he said, trying to regain his balance, using a nearby cable as a makeshift handhold. "Endangerment is just unappreciated genius in disguise." She tilted her head, long ears swaying slightly, and he noticed the way her armor shimmered faintly as her body adjusted to the weak gravity, the nanites inside responding to her every movement. He could see the faint patterns of bioluminescence in her eyes reflecting off the metallic surfaces of the ship. "You really enjoy making things complicated, don't you?" she asked. "I like to keep life interesting," he said. "Otherwise, I might fall asleep while floating through the void, and no one wants that." Her laughter filled the cabin again, soft but irrepressible, as she floated closer, nudging a tool towards him with her toe. "I have to admit," she said, voice tinged with amusement, "watching you fumble through my armor is entertaining, and maybe a little enlightening. I learn a lot about human resilience." He caught the tool and pretended to twirl it like a baton, though he nearly smacked himself in the head. C. Resilience and skillful twirling if you ignore the minor risk to cranial integrity. She raised an eyebrow, long ears flicking in mock disapproval. I've dealt with warriors who can lift entire ships over their heads without breaking a sweat, and yet here you are, managing to survive with what style? Style is subjective, he said, and relative to how many floating tools nearly impale me, I'd say it's impressive. The ship shuddered as a section of the hull above them flexed under the stress of micrometeoroid impacts, and a small panel popped open, releasing a puff of recycled air. He coughed dramatically. Ah, see, nothing like a little near-death experience to spice up a routine armor repair. She smirked, eyes twinkling. You really know how to make the mundane exciting. Perhaps that's why I tolerate your company. He laughed, feeling a strange warmth in the pit of his stomach. Toleration is a strong word. I prefer reluctant admiration. You mean fascination, she corrected gently, nudging him with her armored shoulder as he adjusted the last section of her chest plate. I think you underestimate how amusing and oddly comforting you are. He floated back slightly, surprised by the sincerity. Comforting me. Yes, she said, eyes locking on his. Even amidst floating chaos, sparks, and malfunctioning gravity, I find it pleasant. Don't make a habit of it, though. It'll ruin my stoic warrior persona. He grinned, pretending to stumble over his words. Ruining personas is another specialty of mine. Perhaps I should add it to the resume. Her laughter, melodic and soft, filled the cabin again, and he realized he hadn't heard such a human sound in a long time. Something pure, undiluted by the tension of battlefields and interstellar politics. You know, she said after a pause, I wasn't sure if humans could handle this kind of work, but you're doing better than expected. I might even trust you. He froze, floating slightly off-kilter as his hands hovered over a panel he wasn't ready to touch. Trust me, that's a lot to live up to. You seem to have a knack for surviving improbable situations, she said. And your humor, it's disarming. I can't decide if that's dangerous or beneficial. Let's go with beneficial, he said, puffing out his chest. I'm very good at being unexpectedly advantageous. She rolled her eyes, long ears flicking, but the corners of her mouth lifted in a smile. Unexpectedly advantageous, she repeated. I'll allow it for now. The ship rocked again, this time gently, and he pretended to brace himself, only to have his foot catch on a loose panel, sending him spinning in a slow pirouette through the cabin. She laughed again, a rich, melodic sound that made the gravity-shaken floating tools seem almost like part of the choreography. You know, she said between chuckles, if your survival depends on how entertaining you are, you might actually be more dangerous than any warrior I've faced. He grinned, trying to recover his balance and failing spectacularly, bumping into a floating wrench that bounced off his helmet. Dangerous, me. I prefer charmingly hazardous, thank you very much. Her ears twitched in amusement and she nudged him lightly with her armored shoulder. Charmingly hazardous, she echoed. I think I like that, fits you oddly well. As he floated closer to adjust a misaligned joint in her shoulder armor, she shifted slightly, letting him see the way her long ears caught the light, shimmering faintly, bioluminescent patterns rippling across her skin in a rhythm that mirrored his movements. You really are paying attention, she said softly, almost as if surprised by the admission. I have to, he replied, carefully maneuvering the plate into place. I'm not just repairing armor here. I'm decoding the complex puzzle of how a human and an alien can survive this together without imploding. She laughed again, this time quieter, almost musical. Imploding would be dramatic. I prefer entertaining survival. By the time the last plate clicked into place, floating tools orbiting lazily around them like tiny satellites, the human man realized they had fallen into a rhythm together. Humor and chaos had softened into collaboration, and the tension of battlefields and damaged armor had become background noise to the light, teasing connection forming between them. "You did it," she said, voice low and warm, her long ears twitching as she studied his expression. "You really managed it, and somehow you made it amusing. That's impressive, human." He floated back, chest swelling with a combination of relief, pride, and a strange, fluttering excitement. "Amusing and alive. I'd call that a successful day." Her lips quirked into a small, almost imperceptible smile. "Alive is good. Amusing, perhaps more so than you realize." And in the low-gravity, humming interior of the transport ship, amid sparks, floating tools, and laughter, they shared a moment that was fragile, fleeting, and entirely their own. One human and one alien, surviving, laughing, and finding something extraordinary in the simplest of tasks. The alarms blared through the transport ship, shrill and urgent, bouncing off the metallic walls in a rhythm that made every floating tool spin like a small moon. He swore loudly, grabbing the nearest panel to steady himself, while the alien woman floated beside him, long ears twitching in perfect synchrony with the ship's warning lights. "Bounty hunters," she said calmly, though there was a flicker of amusement in her eyes. "They apparently don't appreciate a human comedian operating my armor repair station." "I can't imagine why," he said, snatching a wrench from midair and spinning it lazily like a baton before missing entirely and having it clang against a bulkhead. "I mean, who wouldn't want to face me in combat?" Hazardously charming, fully armed with sarcasm. Her lips twitched in the faintest smirk. "You do realize that sarcasm is unlikely to disable their weapon systems, right?" "Ah, but distraction is my specialty," he said, pivoting to float toward a cluster of glowing control panels. "Watch and be amazed as I moderately confuse them." She rolled her eyes, long ears flicking. "Moderately confuse, you say? I'm counting on it." They moved together through the ship, a strange ballet of precision and comic missteps. He floated backward while she nudged him gently with her armored shoulder, guiding him past a volatile energy conduit, and he stumbled, just enough to spin around and accidentally trigger the emergency defense drones. "Oops," he said, trying to sound innocent. "I may have activated something." "Something? You mean the tiny death swarm?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. Her armor hummed faintly, responding to her commands, and a pulse of energy from the plating deflected an incoming laser. "I was beginning to wonder if your talents were purely decorative." "Decorative and deadly," he replied, ducking a laser that could have singed his eyebrows if he still had them. "I like to keep a human element in the fight. Adds flavor." She laughed, the sound soft and musical, and for a moment he realized that amid the flashing lights, floating tools, and blaring alarms, her laughter was the only constant that grounded him. "Flavorful chaos," she murmured, nudging him again, just enough to send him spinning past a console he might have accidentally reprogrammed to play intergalactic polka music. "You're welcome," he said cheerfully. "Adds ambience to the battle." By the time the last of the bounty hunters' ships had been disabled by their combined improvisation, his unpredictable antics, her precise energy manipulation, they floated in the aftermath, sweatless in the zero-G but exhilarated. The ship's interior smelled faintly of ozone and burnt circuitry, and one of the defense drones hovered lazily, blinking in a pattern that looked suspiciously like applause. She lowered her helmet, letting her hair drift slightly in the artificial gravity as the ship's stabilizers flickered back to life. Her long ears relaxed, tilting forward in a way that felt almost human. "I suppose I owe you some gratitude," she said, eyes studying him carefully. "You've proven adaptable, courageous, and remarkably amusing under pressure." He scratched the back of his neck, unsure how to respond. "I was just trying not to die, and maybe keep you entertained while I did it." Her lips curved into a small, genuine smile, and she floated closer, hand brushing the edge of his sleeve. "Entertainment aside, you've changed something in me," she admitted softly. "I expected cooperation, efficiency, survival. Instead, you brought laughter, and somehow I think I understand humans better now. Their persistence, their ridiculous courage, their humor in the face of danger." He grinned, floating closer, feeling the warmth of connection that had been building since the first day he'd touched her armor. "I think I understand you better too," he said. "Your humor, your patience, your occasional willingness to tolerate chaos." "Occasional?" she asked, arching an eyebrow, long ears twitching. "I'd say that's optimistic." "Optimism is my forte," he said, mock saluting, and she laughed again, soft and genuine, echoing against the ship's metal walls. They spent the next few cycles checking the ship, floating together amid floating tools and softly humming control panels. Each action was punctuated with jokes, teasing remarks, and gentle nudges that kept the tension of the last battle from settling too heavily on them. He repaired minor malfunctions with her guidance, and she allowed him small victories, nodding approvingly when a panel clicked correctly into place. Finally, they drifted to the observation deck, overlooking the vast expanse of the galaxy. Stars stretched infinitely, punctuated by streaks of distant plasma and the faint shimmer of nebulae. He floated beside her, hands resting lightly on the edge of the viewport, watching her long ears twitch in the reflected starlight. "You know," she said softly, "I didn't think I could trust a human. Not really. And yet I do, I trust you." He smiled, feeling a warmth that had little to do with the ship's life support. "I didn't think I'd find someone who could make repairing alien armor and surviving space battles feel comfortable, but here we are." "Comfortable," she repeated, letting her hand hover near his, long ears flicking in amusement and anticipation. "I suppose I could get used to that, to you." He laughed softly, brushing a floating strand of hair from his face. "Used to me. Dangerous, clumsy, and charming. You might regret it." "Regret is subjective," she said, voice low but teasing. "And right now I'm willing to take the risk." They floated there together, side by side, laughter softening into quiet smiles, the galaxy stretching endlessly beyond them. The bounty hunters, the alarms, the chaotic repairs, they were all behind them now. He had learned resilience, humor under pressure, and a strange, unspoken courage. She had learned patience, trust, and the human capacity to turn survival into something unexpectedly joyous. The ship hummed around them, tools still orbiting lazily like tiny moons, lights flickering in rhythm with the pulse of their quiet connection. He reached out, fingers brushing hers briefly, and she responded with a soft, approving nod, long ears tilting forward in the faintest expression of affection. "I suppose," she said quietly, "this is the part where we pretend the universe is orderly and predictable." He laughed, floating slightly closer. "Pretending is my specialty. Reality, as we've discovered, is overrated anyway." "Overrated," she echoed, eyes meeting his in the starlight. "And yet somehow perfect." They drifted together, quiet and alive, laughter and warmth filling the void between stars. For the first time in a galaxy that had seemed endlessly hostile, the human man and the alien woman found not just survival, but connection, trust, and a shared joy that no weapon, no skirmish, and no chaos could ever take from them. And as the observation deck hummed with soft life support systems and the stars wheeled endlessly beyond, they knew that in the vast, unpredictable universe, they had found something rare. Not just each other, but the extraordinary in the ordinary, the laughter in the chaos, and the unexpected comfort of being understood.